In the world, everyone and everything has a name. We have to give a name to everything, because otherwise it is difficult to communicate. So when we give a name, there are names, the names are according to the basic nature of the thing being named. And this type of name that arises according to the true nature of something is called Tajja Paṇḍitā in Pali. And Sayadaw would like to explain today how it is realistic and natural to apply names to the objects observed when we are observing with Vipassana. First of all, we should know what the meaning is of Paṇḍitā. Pa means clearly, distinctly, in a discerning way. And ñati means causing to know. So Paṇḍitā means that which causes clear, distinct knowing. So if we wonder about something, some material thing, for example, well, what is it? If we don't name it, if we don't have a name for it, this material thing, then it's hard to communicate about it. So we give things names. And the names that are given should be appropriate to the true character of the thing being named. Only then will the name be useful. So now, when the yogis are observing the arising object, we do so applying a label, a name. So the things we observe, for example, if we feel the bony area in our body, we feel hardness. And this is because the earth element is predominant. The earth element is mostly what is present at that time. And also we may feel a fleshy area of the body. It feels soft or squishy. This too is due to the earth element collecting in that area, this patavi. So everything in our body has a quality, a true nature, and according to that nature, it should be given a name. Also in our body, there is the water element, apo. So there are things that are moist or solid or flowing things, for example, tears or urine. There are also things in the body which are solid or cohesive. They hold together. And this is all due to the presence of the water element, the predominance of the water element. So the name that we give varies according to our language. Apo in Pali, water in English. There's also the temperature element. Things can be hot, warm, cold, light. There can be light in weight. When there's a lot of heat gathering together, for example, when the weather is hot, we feel hot because there's a lot of heat gathering together. In cold weather, we feel this cold because there's a lot of cold collecting together. When our body has too much heat, then we have a temperature, and our body feels quite hot. Say 103 degrees, 104 degrees is quite uncomfortable. And when we get chilled too, the cold element is evident in the body. So these, there also is stiffness, tension, relaxation in the body. When we sit, or when we bend a limb or stretch a limb, then there's stiffness, tension, the quality of supporting. These are evident. When we feel comfortable, then there's relaxation. So according to the true nature, according to the sabhava, there are names for all these things. As far as nama goes, mentality, there's knowing, various kinds of knowing. There's contact, the feeling of contact, and also there's experiencing the object, feeling. According to their true nature, names arise. So Sayadaw would like to speak about about this in terms of the theory and the practice. The word tajja panyati is made up of 3 words. Ta is one word, ja is another word, and panyati is another word. So ta points out, it could be translated as those. It points out something. So what does ta refer to? Or those? It refers to hard, soft, coarse, gentle. So it refers to true nature. And so hardness, softness, coarseness, gentleness, this is one type of true nature, and this is one thing that the word ta, or those, or that, can point to. There's also flowing, or cohesion, stickiness, solidity. And this is another type of true nature. This is another thing that ta, or those, can point to. Then there's heat, or warmth, coldness, lightness. This is another type of true nature. And ta can also mean that. There's also stiffness, tension, vibration, relaxation. This is another type of true nature, another sabhava. And ta can also refer to this. Then there's knowing a sight, knowing a sound, knowing a smell, taste, touch, knowing a thought. And then there's contact, seeing contact, and so on. Feeling, the feeling involved in seeing, and so on. These also are different types of true nature. And this also can be what this word those, or ta, refers to. So tajja means to arise or to occur. So tajja means what occurs according to these true natures, this true nature or that true nature. So and panyati means name or speech. So tajja panyati means the word or the name that arises that is appropriate for this true nature, for that true nature, a given true nature. Here's an example of tajja panyati. When we go from standing to sitting, nama and rupa, mind and matter, occur in a series, one after another. There's the intention to sit down, which occurs in a series, one after another. Many, many intentions to sit. And there's the process of sitting down, the physical act of sitting down that also occurs in a series. The body gets heavy bit by bit and goes down gradually until it reaches the floor. So there's an intention, a series of intentions, which is mental, and a series of sitting down process, which is physical. Series of physical events, getting heavy and going down. And this process is called sitting down. It involves intention as well as the physical action. We call it sitting down. In fact, in reality, it is mind and matter. It is nama and rupa occurring in a series. But sitting down, is a name that is appropriate for the process, this nama-rupa process. And this sitting down is an example of taja panyati. Developing Vipassana jhana is to know the things which are really there in our own body. But at the start, we can't see these real things separately yet. We can't discern them. We can't see nama, the mind, as something separate. We can't see rupa as something separate. We can't just say, okay, now I'm going to look at patavi. I'm going to examine patavi separately, the earth element. Now I'm going to observe the temperature element, tejo. Now I'm going to see the water element, apo. Now I'm going to look at the air element. One can't just separate out these things which are really there, because we do not yet have virya, sati, and samadhi that is strong enough to know these things as separate things. So we can't know them at the start. And in order to know, we apply names. We observe them as a whole. For example, rising, falling, sitting, touching, lifting, moving, placing, sitting down. So sitting down, for example, is a series of intentions which are mental, and a series of matter, rupa, which is physical. But we all know this as sitting down, and we have to apply this name at first and observe the process as a whole. We apply effort, and at the moment that the sitting down happens, and we use accurate aim. Our sati follows, sati becomes steadfast, the mind becomes concurrent with the object, and then we start to know the different separate things, the true nature that is involved in the sitting down process. So for example, when we observe sitting down, we apply the name sitting down, and we put our mind on the whole body. At the very moment of sitting down, we apply effort to catch the whole process from the beginning to the end, and we aim the mind. When the aim becomes accurate and the mind becomes concurrent with the object, then we start to know. We know the qualities of heaviness or stiffness, support, and so on. Or when the mind falls on the mind involved in this process of sitting down, we know the mind. So only when we apply virya, sati, and samadhi, only when these factors are strong, will we be able to see the separate things involved in the sitting down process. We can't do this at the start. We can't just say, this is nama, this is rupa. We just note it as a whole, sitting down, sitting down. When we are practicing Vipassana jhana, we need to make effort to observe the object. We need to have sati, following the effort, we need to have accurate aim. And the mind needs to become concurrent with the object. And then knowledge will arise. We'll be able to see the true nature, the separate true nature of many things which are involved in the sitting down process at that time. In every person's body, there are various flavors, you might say. They're like flavors, various things that can be experienced. Just like flavors, different flavors can be tasted when we eat food. If we have a soup with some things inside floating around in a liquid, we take a little piece of something and we put it on our tongue, and when we chew, we taste the flavor that individual bit of food has. And everything we eat has some type of flavor, and in the same way, everything that happens in our mind and body has a flavor, has its own individual flavor. Even the very subtle actions, such as blinking one's eyes, blinking, opening and closing the eyes, looking, seeing, bending, stretching. All those things have their own individual flavor. But at first, we have to note these as a whole, using the name, blinking, opening the eyes, closing the eyes, and so on. One has to note the experience as a whole with effort, making effort so that the mind reaches the object, so that sati arises, and we have to aim the mind, and when the aim is accurate and the mind becomes concurrent with the object, then we will know the true nature which is there at that moment. So first of all, yogis have to apply, when observing, the yogis must apply the name for the thing that they are observing. Because it is said, Taja panyati vasena sabhava dhammo gayati. So this means that at the start, true nature is known and observed using or by means of these names, Taja Panyati, names which are appropriate to the phenomena. Later, the knowledge arises without these. So the question arises, isn't it possible just to observe true nature, paramattha, just by looking, without applying a label or a name? It's said in Pali, Nanuja taja panyati vasena sabhava dhammo gayati. Nanuja means there's a question. This means the person is trying to point out a fault that they think they see. The question arises. Isn't observation being done based on using this name? We're observing Paramattha Dhamma, but this name is involved in our observation. Our observation depends on this concept, the name. Isn't that so? So in that case, can't we just discard the panyati, discard the name, and just watch this true nature when we observe with Vipassana jhana? Satchang kayati pobhabhagi. This means it's true. At first, we use a name in order to help observe the object. So these words accept the point that the questioner has just raised. It's true that this is done at the first part of the practice, Pobabhage. Pobabhage means before the mind has full energy, before the mind is clean, before the noting is continuous, before knowledge develops. At that time, one needs to observe with the paññatti, with the name. Development of the mind is called bhavana. Just like if we feed a child, the child will grow, become bigger, stronger, well-developed. So too the mind, the clean mind. It starts out being puny, weak, small, but it gets developed so that it becomes better, stronger, and occurs more and more and more often. So these words, saccangayati pobabhage, well, at first, before the bhavana mind is strong, we have to observe the arising object using its name. So this is the response which accepts the question that the first person raised. Everyone at the start of the practice is the same in that what we don't note is in the majority. Most of the time we're not able to note. Most of the time we're missing at the start of the practice. And for some people in 1 week, 2 weeks, some people 2 weeks, 3 weeks, certainly in 1 month, people can, if in this amount of time, for some people it only takes a week, for some people 2 or 3, even 1 month. But if within that time bhavana is not yet strong, it is due to lack of respect for the practice. It is due to stopping and starting, not being continuously mindful. Sayadaw watches the yogis going to lunch, and some have continuous practice. But he sees some yogis who look up, look down, look to the left, look to the right. So in those yogis, these yogis are not practicing continuously, it's evident. In one noting, the mind is clean, and this is very valuable. The cleanliness, the purity that is gained in one noting is very valuable. And one has to collect a lot of these clean moments, a lot of these noting moments. One has to put them all together, gather them together. And if we take breaks in our practice, that means we lose something valuable. So taking breaks in the practice, not making effort all the time to observe, to stay with our object of observation, means that one doesn't cherish the practice. So Sayadaw has been talking about how to practice and the value involved in observation. So one has to do this observation continuously. One can't look here and there. At those times, one's observation of one's own experience is not continuous. When we see respectful behavior, yogis who are behaving respectfully towards the practice, then those around, those who see such yogis, feel very pleased. And the teachers love such yogis, the yogis who are working to be continuous and who have respect for the practice. So in order to be loved like this, don't just pretend to be mindful. Really do it. And there's one time of day which we can rest. and that is when we're asleep. The rest of the time, we need to be developing observation. And if one is making effort to observe the rising object with aim, all of one's waking hours, there will be bhavana, there will be mental development, and it will start out small, but it will gradually, bit by bit, get bigger and bigger, better and better, stronger and stronger, and knowledge will arise. For this to happen, at first, we need to use a label when we observe the objects. Using labels when we observe can be compared to how a school child learns in school. When they first get to school, a child will learn letters, and the child has to say the letters aloud. Can't just do it in his mind or her mind. They have to say the letters aloud. And only when the child knows how to say the letters properly and how to spell does the child go on to sentences. And then one can read. Eventually one can read books, magazines, and so on. And at that time, one can read silently. One no longer needs to say the words aloud, but just reading, just with looking at the words, the meaning of the words is clear in the child's mind. So when school children start, they read aloud, and doing this, they gradually gain knowledge. And yogis at the start also have to label, they have to say the names of what they are observing in their mind. They don't need to say the words aloud. They just say them in their mind. So that's the one difference. But as the yogi develops the ability to observe, so that one's observing power becomes stronger and stronger, then one goes past the concept and knows true nature. For example, when observing the rising, one knows the qualities of stiffness or tension, whatever may be there. And when the observation is very quick, very nimble, then there's no need to apply labels at all. One can just observe the true nature. One can just see that when one observes the objects, one just sees heat, warmth, cold, and so on as they are. And the mind knows the object fully just by observing. Some yogis say that at first it was hard to note, it was hard for them to observe, but then one by one the objects were clear, and then the yogi no longer had any need to use the label. The yogi was just able to observe the objects, the true nature as it is, one after another. So this is seeing the true nature. And so the mind, it happens when the mind is able to penetrate through to the true nature, which arises and then passes away. It arises and then immediately passes away. So to get to the point where one can see true nature separately like this, one has to start off by using names, using labels during observation. Some say, well, at the start we observe the presently arising mental and physical true nature, nama and rupa, and we apply a label or a name at the start when we observe. So some say that our work involves true nature, sabhava, and this name just adds confusion. Samadhi bhavana and vipassana bhavana, both at the start of these, one must use a name in observation. But it said, Bhavanaya Votamanaya Paññateng Samatekamitawa Sabhaveyewa Chitang Titati. That means that when the bhavana mind, the mind with virya, sati, and samadhi becomes well developed, becomes strong, and occurs very often because of one's continuous noting, then paññateng samatekamitawa, the mind goes past the concept and is established on true nature one moment after the next. Today a yogi said that, well, sabhava is there, but the form there's no form. Form is not there. Sabhava is the characteristic of what is really there. And one should try to observe this. One should try to become able to observe this. And if in time one is not able to do so, it means that a yogi is not practicing respectfully, not practicing with meticulous care or continuity, cherishing the value of a single moment. When one doesn't actually have the experience of seeing directly for oneself, then imagination comes in. And some just imagine and then say what they imagine when they report. So if you say what you think, but there's not knowledge involved, then the meditation teacher knows when this is happening. The things that one imagines without, when one speaks about what one imagines but doesn't really know, it's evident that these are not sure. So the teacher knows when the yogi is speaking like this. On the other hand, if yogis make effort to observe the arising object with aim, then because the way that they observe is good, they will see. What they see will be good too. If the way we look at something is good, correct, what we see will also be. So in that case, knowledge will be involved. So we will be able to say what we see and really know. So when the yogi reports what they've really seen and known in the practice, the teacher trusts what the yogi says. The meditation teacher believes such yogis and loves them. So Sayadaw urges and hopes that you all may be able to try to use whatever time you have so that it is valuable and so that you become loved by the meditation teachers. That's all for today. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.